take a look at this that just came in. This is a Reuters Ipsos poll. And what it's showing you is that in one state in particular, he's succeeding quite well with one particular group. Well, we got a few polls to get to. I mean, there's also, you can see this one, again, Reuters Ipsos, a new poll of Americans living in the swing states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada finds that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are in this statistical dead heat. So it's like super tight, razor thin margin. Let me tell you, if she was a good candidate, it wouldn't be super tight. Are you kidding me? Why should it be super tight? I mean, it's Donald Trump, for goodness sakes. People would have any excuse in the world, theoretically, not to vote for him, right? Well, it's Kamala Harris he's running against, and she's not the best candidate, like it or not, okay? And she's done a terrible job on the border. She's done a terrible job on the economy, and people know that. They don't want to get more of the same with Joe Biden. Now, Kamala Harris, or should I say Barack Obama behind the scenes pulling all the strings. So they don't want it. They don't want it. That's why she's not even doing better. She should be doing better. Again, you've got a honeymoon going on. This woman should be killing it, but that's not the case. So again, Reuters Ipsos showing us that this is a statistical dead heat. It is razor thin. And she might, on the margin, be coming out like a point or two ahead right now, but I don't think that's going to last. I think this is the excitement. This is the media enthusiasm. And then once they figure out, oh, maybe Tim Walz didn't really do what he said he did in the military. Or maybe these people are sort of crazy leftists a la what you might get down in the likes of Venezuela. I mean, seriously, people are going to wonder about them. We've got some information coming out about just exactly how they were running their censorship division over there at the Biden-Harris White House. All this stuff adds up. And not to mention Harris's point of view on Israel. I mean, that is definitely bucking the trend of what we've seen historically with Democrats. And that's why when you get to this very, very deep blue state, I'm talking New York, baby, I'm talking New York, what you see is, in fact, a lot of Jewish voters are pulling away from Kamala Harris. They're not going to vote for her. They're going to vote for Trump instead. And this is hard for people to admit, right? It's not like Trump polls especially well. He tends to have a much more of an undershowing, if you would, when it comes to the polls. But take a look. This is the headline. Trump takes stunning lead over Harris with surprising group in blue state. Vice President Harris, she's still ahead in New York. But listen, you know what? Biden was ahead by 7, so she's ahead by 14. Maybe New York's in play, maybe it's not. It's probably not, but I think this is a big deal because Jewish Americans are like, whoa, lady, come on. And now you got Waltz in there as well. So take a look at this. This is stunning because if you think historically of where Jewish voters have been, they've actually overwhelmingly supported Democrat candidates up until now. American Enterprise did a little bit of due diligence on this, American Enterprise Institute, and they found that Jewish voters overall have basically supported Democrats over Republicans by a margin of 71% to 26%, going all the way back to 1968. So all the way back to 1968, you had this overwhelming support. Well, guess what? Guess what? That has changed dramatically. That has changed so dramatically because now it's like flipped. Now Jewish voters are supporting Donald Trump. And it's in part because of this major issue being Israel. I want to get to another interesting poll that came out, which is showing that actually he's making gains with the white population. So I found this kind of interesting. This may be in part why she picked Tim Walz, although she could have picked Shapiro and maybe courted some favor with the Jewish population, but she went maybe with Walz because she's worried about this divide where a lot of white voters don't really see her as recognizing some of the issues that they consider to be really important, things like inflation, et cetera, as front and center. And so what you see is that he has actually picked up in the polls. I mean, that's amazing since she was announced. And so he's now actually gaining about 50, some 50% picked Trump in July polls. That's up from 46% in May and June. So I think it's quite possible that a lot of white Americans are saying, what the heck did you guys just do? I mean, we had Biden, we selected Biden, we went to the polls, we voted for Biden, and then you pulled a fast one and you gave us Kamala. And so I don't think this is triggered by race at all. I want to be careful about that. I actually think this is something that's sort of symptomatic of how a lot of Democrats feel. They're like, what just happened? And what just happened was they traded your candidate, guys. And so you should be frustrated. You should be upset. And so now you've got these very, very tight polls, But what you're finding is that he's breaking out with two groups in particular, with white Americans and with Jewish Americans. And I think that that matters because, again, we're not there yet. I mean, it's still a ways until November. And the more America sees of her, the more they're really not going to like her. I mean, look, she was yelling at some people there in Detroit at the rally they had. We'll get to that in a second. But I think once she's tested on some of these policy issues, there's not going to be a whole lot to see. They're not going to like this. In fact, when I went through her website, I couldn't believe it. I started showing it to friends and family. I'm like, wait a second. This is her website. Have you ever seen a political candidate in your entire life who literally has nothing on her website as far as policy goes? I certainly haven't. I've never seen anything like it. It's just mind-boggling. So here's this woman who comes along. She's got no policy chops whatsoever. She's a radical socialist, if you ask me. Certainly she's told us enough times how she feels on gender issues and trans issues and, you know, basically a redistribution of wealth issues. I mean, we know who she is. We know where she comes from, California. We know what we're going to get, sort of, because she's actually not trying to articulate that. I think she's afraid. I mean, this is a woman who's out there saying, oh, forget the Supreme Court. Who cares about the Supreme Court? We, meaning she and Biden, we can bypass that so that we can make sure that we can pay for all these kids' gender studies degrees, right? With your taxpayer dollars. She's pretty radical. She's pretty darn radical. And so the more people understand that, the more they find out who she is, I think you're really going to start to actually see, believe it or not, Trump pull ahead. He's doing an interview next week with Elon Musk. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I think that there are going to be some pockets of opportunities here. He's going beyond the mainstream media. Everybody's sick of the mainstream media, and he's got a shot. He really does. And these two polls that just came out, they really start to prove it.